Welcome to Life by Design for Chiropractors, episode 128.
Welcome to Life by Design, the podcast for chiropractors. Here's your host, Dr. Jamie Richards.
Welcome to Life by Design for Chiropractors. I'm your host, Dr. Jamie Richards. On today's episode, we dive into job versus business. Which one do you have? I'll share with you which one I think I have, and we'll share with you some of the requirements to move from one to the other. And it's not to suggest that one is necessarily better than the other. It really comes down to what you're looking for. One of the areas we talk about as important in having a business is developing the sales process. So I'll put a link to the Ultimate Sales Blueprint. It's a course that we've put together that really goes in deep, 16 hours of sales training for chiropractors. So if that's something that you need or your team needs, then take a look at that and follow the link. Otherwise, enjoy today's episode of Life by Design for Chiropractors, the voice of reason in chiropractic. Cratio, welcome back to Life by Design for Chiropractors.
Jamie, happy to be here, man, as always.
Yeah, it's great. Today, it's always nice to get some trolling on our, whether it be our ads or whether it be on, posts. And in this particular instance, one of the ads that we have that runs is the Chiropractic Marketing Blueprints. We give access. It's a freebie. It's fantastic. It's on the wall behind me somewhere. And I use it every single day in my practice and in our other businesses. And it's a fantastic tool. So, it's wonderful. I feel good about giving it out. I feel good about the content. It's super, super important. And so we got a comment on there, and I guess the sentiment of the content was, I'm a doctor. Damn it, I'm a doctor, Jim. And
damn it, Jim, what the hell's the matter with you?
I'm a doctor. I shouldn't have to, market my practice, or I didn't go to school, so, I had to sell. I think that was the basic sentiment, correct?
Yeah, it was something like I didn't go to. If I wanted to be a marketer, I would have gone to business school. I'm a doctor. I went to chiropractic school.
Right, and I mean, as usual, we respect everybody's freedom to leave a comment. In fact, I love that people leave comments. It's great that we have differing opinions because that creates most of our content for the podcast and our online content. So it's fantastic. So you want to keep trolling our posts and our ads? That's awesome. That's actually perfect. We love it because it brings up a great point. And, he's not wrong in some ways in the sense that I think you're going to go in one direction or the other. And that's what we'll talk about today is, do you want to have a job or do you want to have a business? So, if you want to have a job where you show up, you leave, your job is to, and again, it depends what paradigm of chiropractic you're in, but let's say your job's anywhere from treating people's, back pain to analyzing and correcting subluxations or somewhere in between those. But if you want to show up, put your shingle out, hope that people come, do a good job, hope people refer because you're, good at what you do and you care about people, and then go home at the end of the day and hope in many ways, and I'll use the word hope, that is going to be enough to generate enough income that you can keep showing up and repeating that cycle over and over again and have the life that you want. If you want to do that, I think that's great. I would consider that a job. A business, and then we'll come back and break these down. A business, on the other hand, is an entity that ideally could exist without you, right? It doesn't necessarily have to have you doing everything, number one, and it doesn't have to have you doing it every single moment of every single day. So, I would say, if I'm being honest, at least at this point in my practice, and I had to answer this question today to a client, and he had said, wow, you've got such a great business. And I said, actually, right now that I don't have an associate, mine is actually more of a job. My gym is a business, right? My cafe is a business. Life by Design for Chiropractors, to some degree, is a business. It doesn't just require that I show up every day, and it's not just time for money in that sense. But my chiropractic practice, at this point, without my associates, is a job. And I show up, and I have to be there. And if I'm not there, things don't happen. Money doesn't come in. Patients don't come in. So we're working itself back to a business. Now, if it's a business, again, it runs not necessarily with me there every moment, and it has some very specific components for a business to run in an optimal way. We call those the requirements of a successful practice, which you could just replace that and say requirements of a successful business: team, leadership, communication, and systems. And if you break that down, really what we're talking about today is that you need to market your business and you need to be able to sell. And marketing and sales are two absolutely vital parts that seem to be ultra resistant to chiropractors.
I mean, yeah, look at so we're in Canada, and the marketing and the sales for medicine have already been done for generations, right? So, you can be a doctor, just the idea to think that like it's dirty almost if you want to learn how to communicate. I think that's really the part that struck me as really sad. It's this idea that I don't need to learn how to communicate because I'm a doctor. It's almost like, sales and communication and marketing is like the sleazy, dirty thing. And I'm high and mighty because I'm a doctor. That's the part where I was like, man, I kind of feel bad for this person in a way,
Well, when we use the definition of sales being, getting somebody engaged in a future benefit that's good for them, and then getting them to emotionally take action and then commit to that action and follow through. So what's the difference of telling somebody I need to see you 3 times a week, or I want you to do this exercise, or you know what I mean? You are selling your patients every single visit to the next thing that you want them to do.
That's exactly right. That's the context that's being dropped is like that, somehow you have the authority to, and you don't have to learn this stuff, which is ridiculous. So I don't know. And I don't know what the aversion is, I don't know where it came from. If anything, the more that these things fall apart and the more doctors actually have to learn how to market, it's actually going to be hilarious because most of them have no clue what the hell they're doing.
Well, that's true. I mean, I feel like as much as I would, on one hand, consider ourselves leaders in marketing within the chiropractic profession, I feel very confident in that, seeing what exists. But in terms of the larger scale of marketing, I'm literally an ant in terms of, what I know today. Now, before that, I was a flea. So, I'm moving in the right direction and I feel super confident. And even seeing my own business going from, I was looking at some ad spends and such, and, looking at an office that had a $200 or $300 ad spend to my office, which has a, $1,000, $2,000, this month's $3,600 ad spend. But my office is generating probably almost 40% more revenue at this time this year than it was last time pre-COVID.
Yeah.
Which is crazy given the circumstances. And I attribute it 95% to marketing and literally just hitting the button more often, putting better creative out, working on my brand, building better ads, having better communication, understanding my avatar more, understanding their pain points more. It's really not a lot of the internal stuff because we already had that in place. I mean, I hate to make it so simple, but sometimes it's just clicking the button and putting the money behind it so more people actually see the good stuff that you're doing already.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think you're dropping context because, I think this is really the message. When you look at what most people are doing in chiropractic marketing, that's all they're saying. We'll just, spend the ads and get people in for free. To get to where you are, it was an 8 to 10 year, an 8 to 10 year knowledge journey. Right. And you're still
well, and even if you're
still learning.
Yeah. And I think my point really is, sure, I agree, running, say, a conversion-based ad or bringing people in on a consultation, things like that without having to give it away or giving, big discounted examinations. Definitely. That's a huge learning curve. You need to build an audience. But for a lot of people, I look inside these ad accounts because I now manage a handful of them. It's just even the goodwill content. Nobody's seeing it. You create this goodwill content and you're not putting any money behind it. I think, really maybe one of the things to touch on here in today's episode is this idea of knowing your numbers, right? Yeah. And you know your numbers. You go on the Shark Tank as an example, or the Profit or anything like that. And they don't even care about what business you're in. Right? That doesn't matter to them. Yeah. What matters is what your numbers are, right?
Yeah,
what does it cost? Yeah. What's it cost to acquire? What's that?
What's your sales? That's all they ask.
What's your sales? And what does it cost to acquire a client, right? What is your client acquisition cost? And I mean, think about that. If you were to ask, a doctor, a chiropractor, what's your client acquisition cost? They're not even going to know what their client acquisition cost is on, say, a particular ad spend. I know that I just ran a lead ad as an example. I wanted to test out lead ads. So direct to Facebook opt-ins versus to a landing page. And I used my best performing ad that I used for a landing page, and I used it in a lead ad so I could compare against the standard. So I knew what the standard was, and I ran it, and it performed relatively well. I was getting lead ad opt-ins for about $60. Now remember, $60 are consultations, and we're booking 80% of those. So if I had 10 lead ad opt-ins, I get 8 of those. $60 each. The total ad spend for 10 was $600, but again, only 8 come in. So the acquisition cost is more. It's going to be closer to $100, let's say. But again, that's 8 coming in, paying $150. I paid $600. They paid me $150 times 8. That's whatever it is, over $1,000. I already made money before they did the examination, before they left. And then, we're going to convert 6.5 or 7 out of 8 into, $25,000 or $30,000 worth of, regular care, lifetime value. And so if you know your numbers, I know that I would run an ad and acquire people for $150. Easy. I would pay $200. I've got so much buffer there. But again, if you don't know your numbers, then how are you going to do marketing? And so I think it's not knowing your numbers. It's being afraid to hit the spend button, thinking that I'm going to hit spend and people are going to come in.
Yeah, but you took the words right out of my mouth. Here's the problem: if your lead acquisition cost was infinite, meaning you're spending money and not acquiring any leads, for sure, you would still be spending money.
I did, and so for up until say even 12 months ago, I didn't run a lead ad. I'd never run a conversion ad before. I'd never run a consultation ad, really. That's not true. Mike ran one for me way back when, and it worked quite well. And then I just basically did goodwill content to the tune of, over the 3 years, I think it was about a $16,000 or $17,000 of ad spend. Now people would come in and say, I saw your videos, but there was never any direct, I clicked the button and I put my name in there and I came to see you. Right. But I was happy to spend that. And again, I know we keep beating a dead horse here, but the profit margins in your practice are ridiculous.
Yeah, but but here's the thing, you're right. But here's the point is that's, I don't know, man. I think that's the big barrier for most people. Most people have this illusion that somehow they're going to automatically right out of the gate, without knowing anything, without setting anything up, without having, with having terrible creative and not even goodwill content, like just manipulative bullshit of trying to con somebody to get into your practice. Goodwill content is actually helping somebody, not, click the link and get the rest of this video. It's here's this stuff for free. That's goodwill content.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think most docs can't get past that point. They can't get past the idea that I'm going to create goodwill content and spend money to get it out to people to help them without the return coming in right away. And I think if you can't pass that, then nothing else really matters after.
Well, one of the homework assignments I gave a client today was, you've committed to a $500 ad spend. When I look in your ad account, you better have spent the $500. Yeah. So once you commit to spending it and you're guaranteeing me you're going to spend it, then you might as well create good stuff because you're going to spend it. So you're either going to spend it on shit or you're going to spend it on something good. So you might as well take some time to create something good that's valuable for people and put the money behind it. And, it doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. And, again, the take home message for today is, if you want to be a doctor who just shows up and does your job and hope that that's going to be enough, that's great. I don't have a problem with that. But that's not what I want. I know that's not what a lot of people who listen to this podcast want. They want a business. If you want a business, your business has businesses have a marketing team, a sales team, a delivery team. You just happen to be all of those. Yeah, there's a monthly or weekly expense that goes into marketing. There's conversions on sales and.
Could you imagine Starbucks sitting around being like, well, we ran this ad and it didn't convert, so we should probably just take all of our money out of advertising.
Right. Yeah. Obviously. Never. No. So, I mean, that's really what we're hammering home again today, just in a different context and with, some different insights there. So take home action steps are, number one, if you don't have a Facebook ads account, goodness sake, open a Facebook ads account. I'm sad that I have to actually say that. So number one is create a Facebook ads account, which you need, have a business page, create a Facebook ads account. Number two, as simple as it is, just put a video up that you think could be helpful, and then spend some money and send it to, it depends how big your audience is, but 5 miles around your office. Now, if you're in a rural area, you might have to extend that to 10 or 15 miles. And then just do that every week, over and over and over again. Build up your ad spend. And then on future episodes or in person, we can talk more about, what happens after that. But until you actually have people paying attention, knowing who you are, right? When somebody sees, let's say your audience is 100,000 people and your reach is 10,000 or 20,000, that means only 1/5 even saw you. And if your impressions are double that, it means the average is, 1/5 of your audience saw you twice. Nobody's going to do anything with you. It's going to take time for people to see you 10 times, 15 times, 20 times, 30 times, 40 times. And that's going to take some time, and it's going to take some money, and it's going to take some work. So, that's the take home today. We'll talk more next episode, Horatio, about sales. And we'll continue this into a part 2 and dig in a little bit on sales and why sales is important. Anything you want to add?
Nope. Sounds great.
Awesome. Guys, thank you for listening to the podcast and listening to, I'm going to mess it up, Horatio. Life by Design for Chiropractors. The voice of reason. We have too many podcasts. The voice of reason in chiropractic.